દિનેશભાઈ નો વિડીયો નથી આવતો.
અનિલભાઈ નો
ગોધાનિયાનો બી જતો રહ્યો. Are you there, Anilbhai?
Yeah, they are all there.
Yeah, but Anilbhai and Dineshbhai.
અનિલભાઈ ને દિનેશભાઈ નો નામ છે પણ
હજુ અનિલભાઈ નો
Anilbhai, are you there?
જાનાબેન નથી આયા હજી.
અમે તો તમારું સંભળાય છે અમને તો.
આના પર તમારો વિડિયો ચાલી ગયો તો.
ના હવે આવ્યો. ઓકે બધા આવી ગયા ને તો. Okay, so
yeah, everybody is there.
Paul is the one that more or less created a framework of spread of gospel. That's the idea. And we'll come to the gospel and everything down. Let's go to the next slide. Smita, go slowly, don't rush. Okay, so I'm going.
I was going to tell you that because I don't know anything.
Don't rush. We want to understand.
Right. So this is the basic form of the history. This is real history, and then obviously we'll talk about theology down the road. So originally the way it happened is this. Romans were pagans. They didn't believe in Judaism. They were neither Jewish nor Christian. So they had religion Christians call it paganism. Basically, Greek and Roman, they were like thousands of gods and everything. We had talked about that paganism, Greek mythology. So they were like that. So in the first 3 centuries after Christianity was formed, at least first couple of centuries, anybody that was claimed to be Christian was persecuted by Roman Empire. So that is the first part. Then was 3rd century, around 300 or so, 320 or so, Constantine was the emperor of Rome, who embraced Christianity. So then essentially Roman Empire became Christian. And the paganism died, and everything that was supposedly paganism eventually became Christian. So European conquest by Christianity started from Roman Empire when Constantine, like આપણે વાત હશો કે જે રીતે બુદ્ધ ધર્મનો સ્વીકાર કર્યો and how it spreaded all over India. Constantine was the one who accepted Christ or Christianity as a religion, and that's how the empire became Christian. Okay. Now Nicene Creed, we'll come to that. It was around 325. During this time of 300 years from the time that Christ died up to 325, there were many different versions of Christianity, and there was a lot of arguments back and forth about relationship of Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and all those things. So what Nicene Creed did was created a document which will be what the current church accepts as the ultimate authority. Now, there are many versions of that document, but Nicene Creed was the first effort to establish what Christ wanted to say according to them, and not what everybody was claiming what Christ taught. So the versions of different people claiming to be meaning what Christ meant was essentially nullified to one single doctrine called Nicene Creed. That was around 325 AD. Okay? And the first major religion of Christianity was called Catholicism. The Catholicism became the dominant religion after the fall of Roman Empire in the 5th century. So when the Roman Empire fell, the power to decide what Nicene Creed means came to Pope, or the church became the central place that will define what Christianity or Christ wanted to say. Greek Orthodox Church departed in 11th century. Now that is the first major break of Christianity happened around 1054, roughly speaking. The original language of Bible and teaching and everything was in Greek. Okay. Then the Latin came in the later part. So then the divergence began to be more prominent. So major break of Christianity happened, which is called Eastern Orthodox religion. which is present right now in Greece, Russia, and some other countries, completely separated out from Catholic Church. And to a point that from 11th century, 1054 to 1980 or 1990, the Greek Orthodox Church and Pope never ever communicated. So for 800 years or 900 years, they were completely isolated from Christianity. They claim that we are the real Christians and Catholicism under the Pope is baloney.
Yes.
That is what happened. But Catholicism was the most dominant religion. Eastern Orthodox religion, Christianity was a small portion, and I'll come to the numbers also. But so first major break happened, if you think of that, original Coptics diverged from Christianity around 2nd century. And then Christians among themselves were kept on arguing back and forth, ultimately united by Nicene Creed in 325, broke down. Major first break happened in 1054, and next major break came around 1550 or 1560, just around 16th century. It happened over next 50 years, around 15th and 16th century, where Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King, Martin Luther, broke from Catholic Church, and Protestants were called Protestants. So they called themselves Protestant. So they protested against Catholicism of the Pope and became Protestant. So three major breakdown or three major groups. Eastern Orthodox Church, 11th century, and 16th century, Catholicism and Protestant, they diverged. And that is a major issue. Just so that you understand, in America, around 70% of people, 67% or so, are Christian. If you think in terms of further breakdown, about 1/4 of Christians are Catholic in America. Rest of them are Protestant. If you think in terms of geographic distribution, the Catholicism prevailed in Spain, in Italy, and Eastern European countries. Protestants became a dominant religion in most of the Northern Europe, like Germany, England, France, and most of the Americans came from those areas originally. So
more Protestant here.
the Protestant religion became the dominant religion in America because large majority of the population came to America from England, France, Germany, and Northern European countries. Now, let me give you a historical background so that you get understand why America is a problem. Irish, among the English people, Irish were Catholics.
Yeah.
United Kingdom, Ireland was essentially part of England, had already annexed Ireland for a while. So when Ireland famine came around 18th century, there was a massive famine in Ireland. So a lot of migration happened during that time from Ireland to America. So there was a massive violence and massive, what we face now against Hispanics and people from South America, like Mexico and all. Same thing happened in 1830s, 1840s against Irish people because they were Catholics. A large majority of Americans at the time were Protestant. So they resisted Irish Catholic migration. And if you remember, Italians were considered to be inferior. Italians were called mafioso and those kind of things because they were Catholics too. And most of the Eastern European countries like Poland and Czechoslovakia and all those countries, which are basically white countries, but they were, when they came to America, they were discriminated too because all of them were Catholics. So first wave of migration happened to be Protestant. The second wave migration happened was Catholics. And Catholics faced a significant difficulty in America in 18th century, 19th century, around 1840, 1850, before the Civil War happened. So in those days, Blacks were considered to be the worst kind, non-citizen slaves. Catholics were considered to be second-class citizens, not desirable kind of people, and Protestants were considered to be the most desirable population. So it took several generations of Catholic people to be assimilated into white population, and the distinction became less and less blurred as the time passed by. One more important history. Who is the first Catholic president of America? Anybody remembers?
Kennedy.
Kennedy, right.
John Kennedy. And
Right.
later
So
is
1960.
second.
So it took literally 200 years of American freedom for first Catholic man to be America's president, and second man just became president last week.
Biden, yeah.
Biden. So all this time, Catholics were never given an opportunity to be the dominant group. And when actually Kennedy was contesting the election, he actually met with a Protestant convention of reverend and told them is that I am going to take the orders from Pope. So Protestants were saying is that if a Catholic man becomes a president of America, what he's going to do is going to take the orders from Pope in Italy, or and do what he tells him to do. So the first major problem happened was Kennedy. Now nobody even talks about Catholic and my second Catholic president. Nobody pays any attention to anymore. But just 60 years ago, that was a major problem. Kennedy was unlikely to win, not because he was not white, but because he was Catholic. So many Protestants will not vote for a Catholic person. As a matter of fact, I was talking with one of American physician who was working with me in state, when I was working for state. He said that when we were being taught, we were, the kid. He says, when we were being taught, they were saying like Catholics have horns in their head, so don't trust them. So you can imagine that why, yeah, go ahead.
Wasn't this one of the reasons why he chose Johnson as the running mate?
Well, that was one of the reasons, yes. Yeah, because he was Southern Baptist. He was a Southern Protestant, and also he was from South, and he knew that that is one of the problems. Yeah, you're right. But the point I'm making is that when we talk about Christianity, we don't understand the internal dynamics of, we believe everybody is Christian, so it doesn't matter. But for them, it does make a difference. Just like for us in Hinduism, it makes a difference between Shaivite and Vaishnavite and Krishna, those kind of people. It does make, or even India, North and South, or Dalit, scheduled caste and upper caste. You can see the difference. So call them Catholics in America as kind of scheduled caste. Or at least that is how they were perceived by most of the Protestants. So in Europe also there was a big division. Northern European countries believed Eastern European and Southern European countries to be inferior. So we are talking about all the original Soviet Empire countries, starting from Czechoslovakia, Croatia, Yugoslavia, Poland, all those countries Italy was part of that. So Spain, was part of West, but they were Catholic countries. So most of the Northern Europeans considered Southern Europeans to be inferior people. Why? It's important also. Why the entire Central America and South America is Catholic is because Spain conquered that. And Spain and Italy were the two major countries that remained Catholic. When the first breakdown happened in 15th century, the domination of Catholics in Spain and Italy was there. So when Spain invaded Central America and South America, they converted everybody to Catholicism. So if you look down from America down to Mexico and all the way to Argentina, you will see most of them are Catholic, because all of them were ruled by Spain. If you look at the West Indian colonies where Britain ruled, all of them are Protestant. or they're Christian, but more predominantly Protestant. So you can see, same thing happened in England. I mean, what happened in England, when you go to Australia, when you go to New Zealand, go to Canada, go to America, because most of them came from hybrid English people, they become Protestant.
So Trump શું છે?
So all of them are Protestant.
Protestant એટલે બદમાશ કરે છે.
So which one is a hardcore, Protestant or a Catholic?
Which one is what?
Hardcore religion.
Hard Christians.
Hard,
Well-
like આપણામાં બી નથી હોતા fanatic
Right.
kind. Like, which one
Well,
is the one?
Protestant
Protestant.
both the system have hardcore and low, and more liberal. But Southern Baptist or evangelical Christians are Protestant. So they are extremely dogmatic about either Christ or go to hell.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Same
they
thing
did even
with-
lot of bloodbath happened in Europe because of that only.
Right. If you
Lot of fights.
since I'm raising the political issue, the IRA, Irish Catholic Irish Republic Army.
Republic Army.
Right. So if you remember, if you know the history, Ireland was divided into two countries, Northern Ireland and Ireland, by Britain. Why? Because Northern Ireland had a population of British origin who were Protestant, but they were a minority in the country of Ireland. So what United Kingdom did was carved out a Northern Ireland country and made it part of UK. So Ireland was divided, 2/3 is Ireland and 1/3 of the northern part was part of United Kingdom, England. So right now, Northern Ireland, which is predominantly Protestant, though it is continuously physically part of Ireland, there is an ocean between England and Ireland. So though Ireland is one country, part of the country belongs to the United Kingdom of England because they are Protestant. So when if you remember in 70s, 80s, when there was a lot of violence about Irish people, the Irish Catholic were minority in Northern Ireland. So they were fighting against England by decimating the Protestant population, being terrorists within their own country. You get the point?
Yes.
So they were
બધું બહુ
ના ખબર પડી.
Northern Ireland was carved out where majority population is Protestant.
Yeah.
So there were still Catholics in that area. So those Catholics wanted to join the Ireland, but they were part of United Kingdom. So they were fighting Britishers and terrorizing England to take revenge on what was done to them.
I have a question, Rajan bhai.
Yeah.
Before we move to the next slide.
Whenever you have a break, I'll ask questions.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so the original Bible, what was the language?
Yeah, I'm coming to that. It's original Bible in Old Testament was Hebrew, New Testament was Greek, and then Latin came down the road. But Christ talked in language called Aramaic, which doesn't exist anymore.
And
So the confusion has been what he said, how it got translated, and then what happened in 15th century. Lot of translations happen in many European languages. So original language of Hebrew and Greek, where Latin became dominant, and then many of the European languages. So each one interpreted the original scripture in a different way. So that's how the reform movement against Pope started. And let me give you the story. In those days, Pope was very, very dominant. I'm talking about from 5th century down to about 15th century. Pope was like God. And they had like essentially army, ruling authority. And the way they operated on, if you don't want to go to hell, you give them the money and they will reduce your punishment from hell.
bribery.
Yeah, basically, આપણે ધર્મગુરુ દક્ષિણા આપીએ ને, I mean, it was like a bribery. Basically, if you don't want to be punished, he is the guy who has direct hotline to God. And if you give him the money, he will pardon you and he will do whatever you want him to do. So
Correct.
Pope in those days had become very, very dominant, and they were basically ruling. You know, so when Martin Luther came, he challenged all those stuff. He said that there is no middleman in the between Christ and people. Pope is not important. Remove the Pope. So direct from people to Christ, bypassing Pope. That's how the Protestant movement came.
That is a protest.
That
Okay.
was the protest. Exactly right.
Pratap, I'm not going to cling on to you anymore.
But
Correct.
anyway,
Your-
so
The
but
booking is confirmed, Dinesh bhai.
બુકિંગ કન્ફર્મ થઈ
So-
ગઈ છે ને
પ્રતાપભાઈ ને પૈસા દ્યો જેને જાવું હોય એને.
પ્રજ્ઞાભાઈ
He has a direct connection, huh?
મને
All right. Let's go.
દિનેશભાઈ નું ગમ્યું તું હા દિનેશભાઈ તમારું
Let's go to the next slide. Yeah.
Let me 1 minute.
Yeah.
before you
still
go, I
have
have a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
I have a question on the earlier slide.
Yeah.
Go
I
ahead.
have also a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Go
એમાં જે
ahead.
તમારી એક બુલેટ છે ને કે ગ્રીક ઓર્થોડોક્સ ચર્ચ ડિપાર્ટેડ ઇન 11th century.
Uh-huh.
So અત્યારે આપણે અમુક I have seen some of the church or something it says orthodox or something in their name in the church. So departed means not a diminished. They departed like made a separate
Basically,
section
they
of-
became a separate sect within Christianity who claim that they are the real Christian,
but they are neither Catholic nor Protestant.
not Protestant. They are third one.
They are third. Okay.
So they are third major group. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Orthodox one. Okay.
ઓકે હવે જેમ આપણામાં કૃષ્ણ ટેમ્પલ ને શિવા ટેમ્પલ ને એવી રીતે હોય છે તો what are the difference in the church? What they have a Christની મૂર્તિ, cross?
Eastern Orthodox Church is much more in images. આપણે બધી બધી ક્રાઇસ્ટની બધી ક્રોસ ઉપર હોય અને લોહી નીકળતું હોય અને બધી જે મૂર્તિઓ હોય પછી then there are a lot of pictures from descending from heaven and all those. They are much more in Orthodox Church,
I see.
more than everybody else. Catholics also have the similar way, but less so. Protestants have least.
I see.
So Murti Puja
મૂર્તિ
is less common in Protestant, much more so in Orthodox Church. And
Yeah,
Catholics are in the middle.
So over the period, like when you visit a church, many times you see a Christ on a cross. Some I just see just only the cross on the table. So
That's right.
that's what the difference is. Sam?
Right. So most of the Protestant church will be less likely to display the figure of Christ.
Oh,
The,
figure of,
Only cross.
the cross will be the symbol.
I see. Okay.
And most of the Eastern Orthodox Church will have a cross and the Christ bleeding and everything on the
Everything.
picture.
Rajan, આપણે બે ક્વેશ્ચન છે જો સો the original જે slave અહીંયા આવ્યા અને એમને કન્વર્ટ કર્યા so they also the most of the black community also Protestant in America.
Because the Protestants were the one who ruled the country.
Right, so they are mostly so
They got them
right
there.
now like from Obama to Martin Luther King to all they were Protestant.
Precisely.
Yes.
Okay. And India માં જે અત્યારે 3% જેવું કહીએ છીએ આપણે 40 million people, they are mostly Catholic, correct?
Well, depends upon when they became converted. So
I
I'll come to India too. There are three major groups. The St. Thomas group, the first one, and then 15th century when Vasco da Gama came.
Right.
Because Vasco da Gama was Portuguese and Portuguese were Catholics.
Catholic, that's why I thought Bombay.
And the 17th, 18th century when British came and converted the people, they were Protestant.
I see. Okay.
So, and by the way,
Okay.
British are Protestant, but they are not necessarily exactly Protestant in the way that the current American Protestant are. They are called Anglican. Now, since you asked me the question, let me give you a difference. Anglican are closer to Catholics in many respects, but they do not accept as a Pope as an authority. They have their own. See, King James decided that I am the God. Pope is not the intermediary. I am the one. So they developed their own system. You are Protestant who believe in God to be represented by the king. And then king eventually transferred that power to the Anglican bishop of England, in Church of England is called. So they are called Anglicans. And the Anglicans are somewhere in the middle of Catholics and Protestant.
I see. Okay.
So if you want to look at the bifurcation, Eastern Orthodox Church is one, Catholics are two, and Protestant are three. But in between Catholic and Protestant are Anglican, who are the little bit of this and little bit of that.
I see.
તો મેરી ને આ લોકો અમુક મેક્સિકન લોકો માનતા હોય છે ઇન્સ્ટેડ ઓફ ક્રાઇસ્ટ તો એ કયું એ ક્યાંથી આવ્યા?
Catholics have a. I'll come to that point, but did you ask me the question? I explained. Protestants believe directly Christ only, no intermediary. Catholics believe many intermediary, Mary and all the saints and prophets and everybody. Mother Teresa was given a title, so Mother Teresa becomes called divine figure. What it's called, I forgot the name. But so every major saint of Catholicism, after 100 years, they call beatitude. That means they become like surrogate devta. આપણે જેને દેવતા કહીએ ને, આપણે ભગવાન ને પછી દેવો. So they are given the status of devo.
Oh, okay.
Like an angel?
Catholics tend to believe that all these guys are.
Masiha, ne? Masiha something.
Messiah means like Christ. But basically they are like representative parliament or the ministers of Christ. Call it that if you want to call that. So આપણે છે ને આપણે રમણ મહર્ષિ ને ઘણા લોકો પૂછતા હોય કે I mean that kind of thing. Like they are given a potent higher level. So Catholics have many variations of those. Protestants generally don't. Protestants are you and Christ, nobody in between. Catholics have a lot of people in between before Christ.
Okay.
So Mary is one of them.
Okay.
So Catholics tend to view everybody that was associated with Christ as saints in some way. So they can be prayed also. They can be like એમના મંદિરો હોઈ શકે, એમની પૂજા થઈ શકે અને બધું થઈ શકે. So Mary is one of them.
So in earlier time when in like America was discovered and all this thing, how did people differentiate with this Protestant and Catholic? I'm just curious because Hindu, Muslim, you can see the face or anything different. So did they have like different churches and then?
Oh yeah, the churches are different. When you look at the church, read the names.
Oh yeah.
You will see that there is a Catholic church, and you will see. I mean, I'll explain what different branches of Protestant. So it will say is a Methodist church or Lutheran church or evangelical. You know, so they will say that. So આપણે કલ્યાણરાજીનું મંદિર છે કે ગોવર્ધનનાથજીનું મંદિર છે કે શિવ ભગવાનનું ટેમ્પલ છે જેવું. So they will know it. We may not know it, but they will know it.
દિનેશભાઈ તમારા ઘરની પાસે છે કયું ચર્ચ છે, કેથોલિક કે પ્રોટેસ્ટન્ટ?
અમારા ઘરની પાછળ જે મોટું ચર્ચ છે ઇટ્સ અ કેથોલિક ચર્ચ.
Okay.
સામે છે એ કયું?
સામે છે not Protestant પણ it's a subset of Protestant.
Okay.
તમે કેથોલિક્સમાં જાઓ છો, right?
હું બધામાં પગ મૂકું છું ભાઈ.
There are 900 different branches of Catholic Christianity.
All right.
900. Wow.
And Protestant is a big group which has many hundred subgroups. So I don't know which church you have, but the point I'm making is this. આપણે જેમ જાતના મંદિરો છે, they have lots of different churches, different groups. But in America there are 900 branches of Christianity.
Wow.
So આપણે ધારો કે અહીંયા કોઈ આપણો દેશી છોકરો કે છોકરી વ્હાઈટ છોકરા કે છોકરીને પરણે ને તો આપણે કે ભાઈ ધોળિયાને પરણે છે આમ. So within the white group, they have like, oh, આ Protestant ને પરણ્યો ને આ કેથોલિક હતી ને.
Oh, absolutely right.
Big time.
But they will not. Of many many dogmatic
Catholics.
people will not marry Protestant and Christian. I mean, Protestant and Catholic.
Catholic.
Same way, many dogmatic people will not marry Christian to Jewish and vice versa.
Oh my God. So people ask them.
Some of them, they outcast, actually they outcast also. They don't even talk to them if
Yep.
they do something like that. It's very, very, very orthodox.
So there is no
So-
difference between what we have, like આપણે બી કેટલા બધા, we said we
Absolutely.
have so many god and goddesses. They also have so many things.
Human psychology, yeah.
And they
Ashok bhai,
also
I'm
have
sure.
it like
But એ લોકો-
outcastમાં પરણવું નહીં ને બધું, right?
Ashok Bhai was saying something.
અશોકભાઈને કેવું છે?
ના question છે કે wasn't it before that if a Jewish married a non-Jew, then would be considered an outcast, just like Parsis ma. In order to remain Parsi, you have to marry somebody that was a born
Yeah.
Parsi. The same thing was in Judaism. But then they realized that as a result of that,
They're losing the people.
their numbers were going down. So then they changed that.
Yep, you're right. That was happening. Many people, because they were not allowed not to be Jewish, they were essentially losing the people. So now they allow both ways.
Yeah.
More in the previous version, Jewish people became Christian because they were not allowed. Like a boy is a Jewish guy and wife is Christian because they cannot be Christian, Jewish. The boy became Christian, or that way. Or one of the partner who was Jew became a Christian. So they were losing people. So now they allow, if you marry a Jew, your wife or husband, then you can become a Jew.
Yeah, but they,
Lot of the
they
Jews
have to
required
convert
conversion.
first, right?
Like
અમારે
Some
અમને ઘરે
daughter
Jews છે
converted
ને.
to Judaism.
ઈલાબેનને ઘરે
Yes. અમારી Cami is a
ના,
Jew.
પણ still એ લોકો કન્વર્ટ તો થવું પડે, right?
અરે કઈ નહીં આજના જમાનામાં શું કન્વર્ટ થવા
a Jew.
Some
એ
required.
બધું કહ્યું ને એટલું હવે એવો ટાઈમ નથી રહ્યો
When he,
Not- not
I mean,
ખરું, ઈલાબેન એવું.
he a Jew, but he became he took a baptized. He was one of the
પોઈટ
poet. He went to he belonged in a actually he was in Eastern religion માં એટલું બધું હતું કે એ ગ્રીસ આઇલેન્ડ માં જઈને રહેતો.
સાયલેન્ટમાં જઈને
He
રહ્યા
became a monk
monk ને
When somebody
but,
daughter
and a
married,
Christian monk
married,
from Jewish. So it's
Converted to
it's not that
Judaism.
it's not that they are not
yeah,
that
he's such a great poet કે રોબર્ટ લેક્સ એનું નામ હતું.
yeah
તો એ-
most of the people અહીંયા નહીં ખબર હોય ને
Yeah.
but he was the well known poet in his time
And by that time, there was actually an Indian who came from RMK. And when I read his notes, they were students together in Cornell. And that particular, this is an interesting history, that RMK, he did a PhD in Gaudiya Vaishnavism those days. Jiva Goswami પર એણે એ RMK ના monk હતા. તેણે છે તે
thesis
PhD કરી.
લખી છે yeah
Oh, RMK, who is RMK?
Which RMK?
Ramakrishna Mission sent him here.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you're talking about one of the disciples.
30s
Yeah.
or 40s. So he became a Cornell student, and his PhD was on Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Jiva Goswami, that's what he. It's but that's so the world is
world is
completely-
now mixing becoming a melting pot
started mixing around
Yeah.
40s and 50s.
Exactly. I think every religion has a people who are extremely dogmatic and
yes
a lot of
some
people who are
yeah.
just kind of
Liberal.
wishy-washy, okay,
Majority
it
are
doesn't matter.
thinking now yes
એટલે it depends upon individual, but you're right. There are some strict Jews, strict Catholics,
yes
strict
they are.
Protestants who will not marry among each other. But not everybody is like that. Jain ને વાણિયા Jain ને વૈષ્ણવ નથી પરણ્યા.
oh yeah nowadays it's
પડ્યા છે ને આપણે અહીંયા છે.
એટલે તો કહું છું.
અહીંયા જ છે આપણે.
મને ખબર છે, એટલે તો કહું છું. એટલે પણ I mean, I think depends upon individual though.
yes.
No, ભાઈ પણ એમાં હું વૈષ્ણવ થઈ ગયો, you know that.
દિનેશભાઈ,
અમે convert થઈ ગયા.
ભજન ગાતો કરી દીધો મને બરાબર, you know.
yes I think ઉપર
Sure.
શું કે મોક્ષ મળવો જોઈએ તો એ બધું કરવું પડશે
I think this is the most interesting lecture you
Rajendra-
gave. They are all up so
મારે
much.
મહારાષ્ટ્ર અને ગુજરાતી બેન પરણ્યા છે તો શું થઈ ગયા? કોને કોને કન્વર્ટ કરે?
That is
એ
that is
લોકો તો atheist છે.
Absolutely, Marathi બન ગયા ગુજરાતી.
Smitaben,
વૈષ્ણવ થઈ ગયા.
that is nothing to do with any of these things. I am a Hindu, and there some people in my family also are Vaishnavites.
કોણ?
I can imagine, I'm sure.
Yeah, that is.
No, no, વૈષ્ણવ એક જ નહીં યાર. આમ
Yeah,
જુઓ
so
તો
it is.
બધા
There is
Christian
nothing to do with like. Huh?
Rajan bhai,
I'm just telling.
અહીંયા બે ફેમિલી છે, અહીંયા આગળ બે ફેમિલી હિન્દુ ને શીખ ભેગા છે, જો ને.
હા, હિન્દુ ને શીખ થયા છે ને, right. અહીંયા બધા મિક્સચર છે ભાઈ અહીંયા કરતો.
I know.
ચાઇનીઝ
આપણે તો આવનારા છે એ બી જુદા જ છે ને.
See,
તમારે અમારું જે બધી ડોટર ઇન લો આવી છે એ બી ડિફરન્ટ
હા,
જ
એ
છે
તો કહું છું કે બધા આપણે બધા ભેગા જ છે.
yeah, my daughter-in-law is Jain.
Catholic.
So, તમારા daughter in law is what?
Jain.
Oh, Jain, okay.
જૈન
But
છે.
my question is, when we hear the term white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, is that mainly used for Northeast American?
Right. Well,
WASP?
see, the way it happened is that white is not a race.
Right?
White is right. See, what happened is this: when the Protestants were discriminating Catholics, what happened is that Catholics eventually united with Protestant when the second generation, third generation came, so that they can combine together, exploit non-white people. So the distinction between Catholic white and Protestant white became less and less distinguishable, become more and more homogeneous because you cannot differentiate by looking at it. So what happened is that the guys that were being subjugated, they joined the guys who were subjugating them to exploit the other group.
Right. Dushman no dushman is maro friend. I understand that, but the term WASP came about for, or mainly.
Oh, WASP you are talking about.
Yeah.
So white Anglo-Saxon Protestant.
Yeah, where did that term came from?
Oh, that is basically North European people. White Anglo-Saxon means British and a Protestant. So white Anglo-Saxon Protestant was a term that was used for primarily British origin, but expanded into German and France and everybody else who was Protestant.
Okay, thanks.
But originally it was Anglo-Saxon, means England only, because the first migration happened was English people, large migration.
Christianity is too complicated. Let us go back to Chineism.
All right,
How about Islam? How about Islam?
So, કેટલી વાર છે?
We have 3 minutes.
Pratapbhai, you are
Rajanbhai.
taking us so much deep and deep now,
I know.
I thought Pratapbhai
Let's go to the next slide and then see if we can finish that.
રાજનભાઈ
હા.
રાજનભાઈ
Go ahead.
તો આ જે ક્રિશ્ચિયાનિટી છે એ સિક્સ માં ડિવાઇડેડ થયેલા છે ને
ફરી વાર.
ને
Seventh Adventist.
Say it again.
ને ફરીથી કોણ? જાનાબેન.
ના આ જે મેઇન છે મેઇન ગ્રુપ છે એ સિક્સ માં ડિવાઇડેડ થયેલું છે ને ઓર્થોડોક્સ ને પ્રોટેસ્ટન્ટ ને એ ટાઈપના
અમેરિકામાં મોસ્ટલી પ્રોટેસ્ટન્ટ છે અને કેથોલિક છે.
કેથોલિક છે અને આમ ટોટલ આખા વર્લ્ડ ની વાત કરું છું.
Okay, there is a breakdown in next few slides as to
Okay.
how they differ, how much each group has. I'll come to that point some point in next week now. But let's just finish. You asked a question, આપણે અસ્મિતાબેને language નું પૂછ્યું. So this slide explains the language. The Old Testament, which is Jewish scripture, is in Hebrew. The New Testament in Greek is a Christian scripture.
Okay.
Jesus was talking primarily in Aramaic language. The Latin version was added, which is